I want to welcome you. Thank you so very much for coming here, for joining me and members of my office for this opportunity to hear what I learned during my first year here at Western. These insights that I'm hoping that I'm sharing with you will give you sort of a broader understanding of what it is that we are feeling and experiencing as a community. And it will not be information that's new to any one of you. I think you may have heard and have seen and experienced these things in the past before in your time here. But I really wanted to just create an opportunity for us to begin to hear those things collectively and begin to talk and consider those things collectively and to figure out collectively how we need to basically use that information to move forward. I wanted to just share with you some components of the Office of Equity.
Haitai Wane Danielle Yaibin. Hello, my name is Danielle. I use she, her pronouns or they, them pronouns, and I just greeted you in my mother's native tongue, which is endangered, and that is in Uchinaguchi. She's from the Okinawa or the Old Ryukyu Kingdom, which is also known as Okinawa, Japan. Equity work is sometimes confused with equality, and so equality is let's give everybody the same thing, and now that's fair. The problem is that people are situated in different places through their social belonging, their identities, abilities, that sort of thing. So if you were to give everybody a 10-speed bike, it's tall, well, maybe it was built for a specific kind of person. I'm pretty short. That wouldn't maybe work for me. Another person might not be able to use it at all. And so you see that that's equal, but it's not equitable. It doesn't help everybody have access to the same outcomes of success. That there are still barriers to that same successful outcome that a lot of our students are facing, and employees too. And we need to understand that and look critically at the systems and structures that may be contributing to that inequity, those gaps. What could we do to help everybody have a really thriving experience here on our campus? How can we help students have the strength of community instead of feeling isolated, and our employees as well? When a place has a culture of belonging and inclusion, and not just tolerates but celebrates all of who I am, then that brings a sense of freedom and liberation to my life. And so I want that for my kids. I want that for our young people.
I'm Jacqueline Hughes, and I am the Chief Diversity Officer and the Executive Director for the Office of Equity. I am from a very tiny island in the Caribbean called Antigua. Undergrad in Pennsylvania, my master's in Illinois, and my graduate work in Arizona, and my professional life started in California. So it was really a westward movement for me. When we talk about the work here as part of the structure of the university, it's really bringing the compliance and the educational component of the Office of Equity together. So the compliance piece is around the state and federal regulations around civil rights and Title IX, and the education piece is about talking about and educating people about who we are as individuals and how our identities intersect in this space, and how those identities can create challenges for us as people. What I think folks are realizing now that I'm here and this office is here is that there is work that needs to be done collectively for us to fix those things that they see. This culture of ADEI should be one of, let's gather information, let's talk, let's connect, let's see if we can get to a level of understanding. And then from there, we want to move into the space of problem solving. Because when you create an opportunity for people to engage in the understanding of the problem of discrimination and racism and anti-trans, anti-Semitism, and you name all the anti and the isms out there, then you're saying, oh my goodness, I understand it. I don't want that to exist in my community anymore, or I don't want to be part of the problem. What can we then do to fix that? Can you imagine walking around feeling that challenge of discrimination and racism every day and still try to learn and work here on this campus, it is difficult to do that and challenging in so many ways that it transforms you into a person that is not productive and not healthy. But we have to all come to that space, one, and come to that space with an openness and a willingness to say, I'm here to share, but I'm also here to listen and understand. Our work should be about, are we understood? Do you hear me? Do you understand where I'm coming from? Yes. And that to me is sufficient enough for us to go to the next step of, what do we do with that understanding? ADI work is a work for everyone, whether you see yourself as a member of the BIPOC community or not. It is work for everyone. We're all in this together. We share this space together. We're responsible and accountable to each other for what happens in this space. I want to create work that's going to be lasting for this community. It's going to have the impact and the effect on the community that we will say, we did that. We were a part of that work. That's what we fought to create in a collective way because it was important for us as a community. And yeah, I'm ready. We need to make sure that we understand the two complementary functions of the Office of Equity. And so I'm going to read this for you because this is really what's going to be on our website as a reminder of what it is our work is focused on. So the Office of Equity brings together two complementary functions, the compliance piece, which you see with CRTC and Title IX, and the community education development piece. From the compliance perspective, the Office of Equity provides oversight to universities' responsibility to protect the rights of each individual, to ensure equal access in all aspects of employment, education, and participation within the university, and maintain an environment that is free of discrimination, harassment against an individual on the basis of the person's race, color, religion, gender, age, sexual orientation, national origin, ancestry, physical or mental disability, or veteran status. What I intend to do here is basically to lead efforts related to organizational community development, where we are including engaging individuals and groups in education and dialogue and learning. We want to examine Western's systems and structures through an equity lens, because I've been hearing that a lot. We have an inherently racist, systemically a racist system and culture here. We want to be able to dismantle that. I've been hearing that word dismantle a lot. So we want to lead those efforts here from the Office of Equity. But we also want to make sure we are advancing, coordinating, and providing visibility to key initiatives for inclusive excellence and for actually building an environment where we feel that we belong and we feel a sense of equity and inclusivity here. And so we're hoping to nurture an environment where folks feel respected, where our identities are seen, heard, and actually valued. I came last year and I thought, folks wanted me to give them a framework, definitions. This is what the problem we're having. Tell us how we're going to fix it. And I really wanted to say, I could give you something, I could hand you what I've done at other institutions, but I thought, Western is not like other institutions where I've worked. And so I can't give you what others have done or have accomplished. So I really thought it was important for me to go out there and understand Western. And one of the things that I did was I looked at the climate survey that you did in spring of last year. I wanted to look at that data and hear what's happening. I also wanted to take a look at the SET report. It was a wonderful document and report that the Structural Equity Team Task Force actually put together, which details our ADI work that's currently happening on campus. And I have to tell you this, one of the things I was very surprised with is that when I arrived here, how much ADI work we were doing across this campus. And that tells me you saw a need, you had a concern, and you said, I'm going to bring my expertise and my interest to resolving this issue. So we're actually doing that here. But I thought I wanted to get out in front of our campus community. I wanted to meet you, hear from you firsthand what it was like to live, learn, and work here. So I thought the best way to do that is listening sessions. And we did about 41 listening sessions across the campus. We started in the residence hall, McCall Class Hall. We made our rounds to North and South Campus, and then we brought it in online as well as in person. I wanted to be semi-structured because I really wanted to not have it be everybody just says whatever. I wanted to just be able to collect some data, but do so in a way that was open enough for people to actually answer the question, but share whatever they came, whatever resonated with them with the questions. So the 3 questions that we asked was, is your identity welcome at Western? Do you feel heard by Western? And how could Western better support you in your identity and role? And we heard a lot of stuff, folks. We heard a lot. We had a live transcriber at each and every session. And they wrote down, not names, but the actual words of folks. So you will hear some of those words. So I want you to hear them for yourself. And so I want to thank those of you who participated, because the fact that you came and you voiced your concerns told me that you were committed to really provide input to really change in this environment here. And I appreciate that very much. And I appreciate you helping me get an understanding about how I can do this work so it can have the impact and the outcome that you deserve and you desire. So we did the data thematically. I didn't want to present you the data today by the 3 questions. I think we wanted to look across all groups of individuals, faculty, staff, and students to see what were the things, the common threads that we were seeing across all of the different groups. So let's go ahead with that video.
It's interesting that sometimes higher-ups make complaints and mention the color of the custodian. That's hypocritical and ironic. Western preaches one thing and then makes complaints about the most diverse department on campus. It happened multiple times.
We need to consider how we're welcoming new and diverse members into our communities. Under what conditions and with what celebrations? In what ways am I allowed to be my true self? And am I welcomed here?
There's so much talk about community and acceptance, but there's no space to get to know people on a personal level. I feel frustrated. I go to class and go home. I'm interested in reaching out to people in other departments to form cross-cultural connections.
As a first-year Latina low-income student, having connections with faculty members that look like you and having a safe space for discussion would make me feel more welcome.
I feel like I have to work 3 times as hard in order for my views to be acknowledged. The classroom is a hostile environment. It's my first quarter, and I'm highly disappointed.
A lot of professors, especially the older they are, feel like making accommodations is like making a political statement.
From folks in this community. Those are exact quotes from the saying in this. And when I've talked about other folks who didn't participate in this, they're saying, yeah, I feel the same way as well. Okay? This is the state of our community where folks are saying, I don't feel a sense of belonging. I don't feel known. I don't feel a sense of community here. And folks are saying, I want to feel psychologically and physically safe here as a person in this community. We have to figure out what does that psychological and physical safety look like. We have to tease that out and figure out what do we need to do in our own individual selves and areas to bring about that psychological safety. We need more opportunities to connect. Okay, folks are connected in their small groups and departments and maybe the colleges, but they're not seeing that connection across the institution. Folks are saying we need more equitable treatment. My office gets report about discrimination and bias and microaggressions and so forth. And folks are saying that I don't feel equitably treated here on campus. And folks are actually saying that we need a broader understanding of what we mean by ADI issues. We have conversations, but we don't think we are talking about the same thing. And so I want to take some time this year and beyond to talk about when we say ADI, accessibility, diversity, equity, and inclusion, what do we actually mean? Okay. When we talk about diversity, are we talking about just compositional diversity? Or are we talking about interdisciplinary expertise diversity? Are we talking about diversity of thought? Okay. When we talk about inclusion, do we consider that belonging and community is part of inclusion? Okay. And these are the things that I want us to talk about so that we can begin to operationalize what those things actually mean for us. What does that look like in the residence hall? What does it look like in admissions? What does it look like in the departments and so forth? How do we create a sense of community and belonging in our departments? What does that mean for us? Because it doesn't have to look the same way for all of us. But if we understand that we want to create a community where people feel that they're treated equitably, that they're respected, that they're seen, that they're heard, that they're valued, we have to figure out what it is that we need to be doing behaviorally to actually make that particular things come through. And the reason why I think belonging in communities that are important is that research has actually shown that. You have institutes popping up nationally and internationally talking about institutes of belonging and uttering and belonging. because we're realizing that we can't really do and dismantle systems of racism and oppression if we're not talking about our humanity and who we are in this particular space. Okay, we've been talking about those difficult and complex issues and nuanced issues, but we're not talking about it in the sense of what we need to do to transform ourselves individually and collectively. And so community and belonging is very important. And Brené Brown, how many of you have heard of Brené Brown? But she says, we are physically, emotionally, cognitively, and spiritually hardwired for connection and belonging. Research have actually shown that. Okay, there's some psychologist research that I've read from Harvard that says, when you're talking about a group of people who come together who are different, what they all want is to be part of something bigger than themselves, so one sense of belonging, because it gives us purpose and meaning. And there's another quote I want to share with you before we close off on this particular theme of belonging and community. And that is Desmond Tutu. Some of you may have heard me mention him before. He says, we're all connected. What unites us is our common humanity. And when we talk about all of the isms and the things that divide us, we forget the humanity in ourselves and forget the humanity in others, because we're thinking about the harm and the fear and the anxiety and the vulnerability that we feel in ourselves as oppressed racial beings, gender beings, what have you. And so he says we think of ourselves frequently as just individuals, separated from one another. But get this, folks, what we do, what you do, what I do, affects all of us. And so that connectiveness, there is some accountability for us to be a part of this work much more fully than we have ever been before. One of the things I also wanted to mention too, in terms of the folks who when we did the listening session, you know what came up, resonated most to me, is that the individuals on this campus who felt the most welcomed and a sense of belonging were members of our dominant community, our dominant racial community. They're the ones who said, yeah, I feel welcome. I see myself here at Western. And I'm sure you know the ones who felt disconnected, undervalued, unseen, and unknown was felt across were the folks from our different demographics, women and minorities, members of the BIPOC community, members of the grounds and custodial teams were feeling that way, new faculty, individuals with accessibility needs, first-gen students, non-traditional students. They're the ones who are saying, we're here, but we don't feel like if we belong in this space and we're a part of this space, folks. We've got work to do, people. We have work to do. Anyway, so let's move on to the next theme that came up.
Professors need to know how to be respectful and engage in debate while discussing world issues. I had a professor who made a Hitler joke in class. She said a great essay topic would have been a scenario where Hitler won World War II and wiped out all the Jews. And then she laughed. She said it wouldn't have worked out for the Jews anyways. And then she laughed again.
There are double standards. Some people get away with bad behaviors while others can't.
The university should hold people responsible for aggressive behavior based on race, gender, and other DEI characteristics.
Success metrics, persistence rates, and other information should all be more readily accessible.
We're asking faculty to learn a new way to teach when we try to get them to incorporate ADEI into everything they do. They've already built their careers and completed their PhDs, and now we're asking them to change their pedagogy? It's a big change.
It feels like a way to silence people by letting them talk, but no action afterwards.
When an issue comes up, everybody is terrified something awful will happen. Cancel culture intersects with accountability here. We want people to feel like they can learn and grow, and it won't destroy their careers if they make a mistake.
These are the words from your members of the community, folks. And one of the things that came out of all of this was that folks are saying we want observable, measurable, and consistent action across the institution in everything that we do. We need to work much more towards that particular goal. We want folks to be transparent. We want transparent and effective problem solving in our community, because we aren't seeing that happening now. And we may find it in small pockets. I'm not saying it doesn't exist at all, okay? But we're not seeing it consistently as we would like in our campus community. and individuals are saying that we feel unclear about the process that we use in the problem solving, get to our big decisions. We don't know what's going on with that. You know, there's a thing that I mentioned after some of these listening sessions. Folks will come to me and talk with me, and they say, I fear messing up and saying the wrong thing, because I feel if I'm going to be isolated, I'm going to be judged harshly, and folks are going to just dismiss who I am as a person in this community. And so I just don't say anything, even when I know and see something is going on and I want to intervene. I can't, because I don't think I will be supported or understood or given grace in the way that I would like for it to happen. That's fear, folks. We can't change if we're operating from that fear base. One of the things that I've heard folks talk about is timely and relevant communication around things. And the accountability piece that ties into this is that there's a sentiment here that when things happen, we don't always, as an institution, come out with a response or information about it. It's in a sufficient time for folks to say, oh, they were aware and they were on it, kind of thing. And we're working on that, folks. We have been working on that. They're asking for our accountability measures to align with our values. And in our strategic plan, we talk about commitment to equity, justice, and respect for dignity and rights. But when you listen to folks across campus, we're not even seeing those particular things resonate in our behaviors and our actions and how we operate too. So this accountability and consistent action are things that we say we value in our strategic plan, but yet we don't see the behavioral evidence of that across our community. So there's another piece about transparency.
If we break apart this resource discussion and look across the institution, we might not be as under-resourced as we think.
Why aren't all the DEI groups across campus connected so we can quit duplicating efforts?
I feel like the admins just don't care. Like they don't want me here in terms of the policies they write and really the bias incidents that happen.
We just want more timely responses.
It's disheartening to reach out to people who are supposed to help me, politely waiting and not hearing back. When I have to do hurdles like that, it's demoralizing.
I got different answers from everyone I talked to.
It was difficult to understand where to go for resources. Tuition, registration, all of that. There was material online, but the website was confusing. I didn't know how to contact an advisor, even. By having so much communication spread out in so many places, there was a lack of communication, at least for new students.
It's pretty self-explanatory, folks. Transparency, we want transparent efforts and actions that we're actually doing. We want our decisions to be data-driven. Much like what we're doing here today, we've collected data, we're processing and analyzing that data, and we're going to use that data to inform what we're going to do. So are we making decisions that are driven by data? Have we collected the right data that we need to make the decisions that are going to be effective and successfully solve the problems that we have? Folks are not saying, I don't see the evidence of how we arrive at some of the decision. So I question that decision, and in terms of really it is one that is intentionally going to be solving some of the problems that we are actually having. So I'm going to move on because I want to make sure we get out of here before the class comes in. So let's get to the other slide. This one here is around siloing.
I feel isolated and excluded from the community here. That shouldn't be the way I'm feeling.
Issues are often diverted to someone else, and then someone else, and it takes a long time for something to be heard. You also have to find the right person to speak to, which can be difficult. You end up in a never-ending cycle. It makes me feel dismissed.
I have seen decisions in at least 3 departments get made in fear of waking the faculty union beasts. And whether or not those were the correct decisions, that didn't seem to factor into the equation.
If connection and interaction were more prevalent throughout the school, there would be growth, expansion, and new ideas. If everyone gets put in little boxes, that's where we'll all stay.
The university should work with the union to stop disrespectful, degrading discussions and disenfranchisement of non-tenure track faculty. Change the rules.
one of the things that we heard that rose to the top in this communication was that how siloed we are as a campus community. And they see in departments, they see it in unions, they see it in divisions and so forth, that sometimes we are engaging in things, sometimes the folks in colleges who don't know other individuals in other colleges because we haven't, as an institution, have a culture where we're doing cross collaboration on a broad level. Now, I know it exists because I've met with faculty who say, oh, by the way, I'm doing research with so-and-so. But what they're asking for is for that to be much more of a culture in an institution, broad culture in an institution, not just happening in small pockets. When I've met with the ADI committees and groups and so forth, and faculty who are doing this work, they're saying, I didn't realize that so-and-so was actually doing that. We have not come together as a community who are doing this kind of work to really talk about the work that we're doing and to begin to identify how we can collaborate, co-create, and innovate across this work. So I am hoping that we can begin to create more opportunities for us to bring greater visibility to the ADI work that we're doing here and to find ways for us to actually collaborate, again, within the ADI space, but also within other areas and other units within our campus community too. And so one of the things that came up also is about resource allocation. We don't have enough resources due to the work. And we have looked at those kinds of questions. I have actually begun to pull that data out and realize that there are resources out there that we are spending on ADI, quite a bit of resources. But the thing that we need to begin to do is to basically ask the question, are we allocating those resources in a very efficient way? And an effective way so that we are actually achieving the goals that we say we want to achieve about ADI and having an impact and transformation on our campus community. So the question then is, how are we going to go about approaching this work? For us to be able to dismantle, structural, racism and so forth, we need to begin to look at who we are as a community and how we function as a community and how we can learn as a community about the things that actually are problematic for us. But we want to situate our work in community building and capacity building. And so what you see here is the three main components for how we're going to approach our ADI work. Do we have the knowledge of the issues that are impacting our community? And do we have the skills to actually engage each other in a meaningful and intentional way to deal with those issues that we've identified that impact us? Are we able to communicate so that we can begin to make some actual changes in solving those particular problems? And are we connecting with each other in terms of who we are as individuals and creating a community of belonging? And I want to have those conversations because I think in doing so, we're going to get to a point where we figure out this is what we have to do differently to create a sense of belonging and inclusion. When we talk about inclusion, we also think about, well, we need to have a place at the table. We see shared governance as inclusion because it's part of the decision-making process within the university. But there are other ways of including individuals. And so we have to begin to ask ourselves, what does that look like for us? What do we want that to look like for us? When we say ADEI, what does that mean for us here at Western? What work do we have to do in each of those spaces in ADEI here? And what does that look like for my department, unit, or division when we're actually doing our work? That's an area of discourse I want us to enter into that space more meaningfully and more intentionally so we will know this is what I actually have to do when I talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility. So I'm going to convene a work group so that we can begin to have those broader conversations about the terminologies that we use about ADEI and equity-related terms. Building our capacity. You've got Daniel and me right now in this office. We can't do all this work by ourselves. I really want diversity champions, ADI champions like you. The culture of ADI needs to be much broader than just the people who are impacted by it. So we need to build our community. So we're going to have professional development trainings. We've actually started those last month. And we're going to continue to have those professional development trainings in person and online. We're going to create a whole cadre of resources that if you're faculty, students, or staff and you want to have those difficult conversations in your classroom, you're going to have resources that you're going to be able to tap into on our website. And some of you have already created those. We want to bring those into, curate those and have those available so you can begin to use those and build your skills individually as well as part of the training and workshop group. We'll have video trainings in person and online. Day of learning. We need some alignment around our work because we have a decentralized structure of ADI. We do, folks. We're doing some great work in that decentralized space, but we don't have vertical alignment and coordination so we can have the impact that we hope to have, the broad impact, the institutional impact. So I really want an advisory committee that made up of students, faculty, and staff who will say, Jacqueline, here's what I'm hearing from my college, my division, and here's what we need to bring to the table to begin to tease out what it is that we are going to do around this, tangible things that we're going to do. So the core foundation of our work is going to move through these different circles that you see here. Foundational understanding, do we know what it is that we're trying to change and solve? Skill building, do we have the skills to actually engage in those conversations and to solve those particular skills, capacity? And deep dive. Some of us want to get into the anti-Black sentiment, the anti-trans, the anti-gay, the discrimination, the racism. We want to talk about those hard-hitting, politically charged things that are just wreaking havoc in our lives. And some of us are actually doing that right now. But I have to tell you, folks, we don't necessarily have the skills that we need to really deep dive into those areas in a very intentional way, consistently, that's going to bring about change. And that's why I want to focus on our foundational understanding and our skills to actually enter that space with intention, with the understanding that when we get out of that space, we're not causing more harm, but we're walking away and saying, oh, okay, I get it. I see what I need to do. What I need to do as an individual, what I need to do collectively to bring about the change in that area. So we'll be moving through those spaces. I'm not saying we're going to stay here first, then we're going to move there, and then we're going to move here. We're going to move it in and between those spaces throughout the academic year. You will see workshops where we're going to be talking about racism and discrimination and bias. And we're going to sit and we're going to talk about those things in the community. And we're going to create norms in which we can talk about those things in a way that does not result in us wanting to flee from that space. Because when you leave a space where we're trying to have discourse, you're walking away from an opportunity to understand and learn. And then what happens, the problem that you're trying to address still persists. So how we want you to engage with us, we really need for you to show up and participate in these things. I've always found that wherever I go and I do diversity work, I still have to go through diversity training at the institution as part as an employee requirement. And I learn new things about diversity, equity, and inclusion when I go through that training. So please show up whether you're an expert or not in that area. Come talk to us about your experience. I need to know what it's like for you to live, work, and learn here. Because the more I understand this community and the people in this community, the more I can say, aha, these are the things that we need to be doing differently. And learn how you can help with ADI work. Some of you have come to me and said, I am X. I know I don't belong in this space. As a matter of fact, I'm seen as the person who create the problems in this space, but I really want to be a part of this ADI work. How can I enter this space without feeling as if I'm going to be taken over, I'm intruding in a space that I may not belong, or people may think I don't belong? I want you all to be part of that particular space. Come talk to us about that, how you can help in that work. And that's where you can become an ADI champion. And we'll have more information about that going forward later. So I want to just leave you all with that and say, this is in a nutshell. This is a nutshell, folks, of the work that we want to launch. And you're going to see more information about this on our website. We're still working on our website. You'll be hearing from me throughout the academic year. You will be seeing resources. And I just want you to know that I'm committed to this work, and I hope that you will join me in that commitment. Let's get together and do that work, okay? I'm looking forward to working with you. Thank you so much for being here, folks.